My grandmother has never let me wear red, not once in my entire life. I just found out the horrifying reason why. It started before I could remember. My mother said when I was 2, grandmother found me in a red onesie and carried me to my room without a word, changed me into something blue. When mom asked what was wrong, grandmother said she can't wear that color and refused to explain. That was the beginning of a rule I'd follow for 26 years. No red shirts, dresses, shoes, not even red nail polish. If I showed up at grandmother's house with anything red, she wouldn't let me inside until I'd changed. If someone at our table wore red at a restaurant, she'd ask to move or leave entirely. The family learned to accommodate without asking questions. At my 8th birthday party, I wore a red shirt a friend had given me. Grandmother arrived, saw me, and her face went white. She pulled me into the bathroom, stripped the shirt off, hands shaking, tears streaming, kept saying, not that color, while putting one of mom's sweaters on me. Christmas was complicated. Grandmother wouldn't touch red ornaments, would leave if someone wore a red sweater. We all thought she'd lost her mind years ago, and this was just how it manifested. When I got engaged last year, I mentioned wanting red roses in my bouquet. The silence lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. Then her voice came through, small and broken, begging me to choose any other color. She'd pay for the entire arrangement. I agreed because I always agreed. But something shifted. I was 26, spending my life following a rule I didn't understand. I decided I was done accepting silence. I drove to her house last Saturday, intending not to leave without answers. I expected something horrifying, some dark trauma that had broken her relationship with a color. I was ready for horror. That's not what I found. She was in her garden when I arrived, 78, still sharp, still unwilling to talk. I told her I loved her but couldn't go another day without knowing. She went very still, then started crying. Not the distressed crying when red appeared unexpectedly. This was deeper. The crying of someone whose oldest wound had been touched after decades of protection. She asked if I knew I'd had an aunt. I said yes, my father's sister who died young. She shook her head. Not that aunt, her daughter, her first child, before my father. I didn't know. Nobody had ever mentioned a child before my father. Grandmother had never spoken about her, not once. Her name was Rose, 3 years old, summer of 1968. Blonde curls, blue eyes, a laugh that filled rooms. Her favorite dress was red with white flowers along the hem. She was wearing it the afternoon she died. Grandmother was hanging laundry in the backyard. Rose was playing in the grass. There was a pond at the edge of their property. Not deep, but deep enough. Grandmother turned away to pin a sheet to the line. When she turned back, Rose was gone. She found her in the pond, face down in water that barely came to an adult's knees, the red dress floating around her like a flower. Grandmother pulled her out, but it was too late. Rose had run toward the pond to catch a frog or see a bird, and grandmother had looked away at exactly the wrong second. She blamed herself completely. Still does, 55 years later. She couldn't save her daughter and couldn't forgive herself and couldn't say her name without breaking apart, so she stopped saying it. Had my father 2 years later, raised him without mentioning the sister he'd never know, but she couldn't forget. Couldn't look at red without seeing Rose's dress floating on that water, without seeing her daughter's face underneath, so she built a rule around everyone she loved. No red, not ever. Not on anyone she cared about because she couldn't see that color without drowning in guilt all over again. The rule wasn't superstition, wasn't dementia. It was a mother protecting herself from reliving the worst moment of her life. I held her in her garden while she cried for a daughter she buried 55 years ago. I'd expected a horrifying reason. What I found was grief, the kind that never heals, just gets buried under years of silence until it calcifies into strange rules nobody questions. My grandmother lost her baby girl in a red dress and spent the rest of her life unable to look at that color on anyone she loved. I changed my wedding flowers to white and blush pink. We talk about Rose now sometimes. Grandmother shows me the one photo she kept hidden in a drawer for 55 years. A little girl in a red dress smiling at the camera, alive and unaware. My father was 60 years old learning he'd had a sister. He cried too. At my wedding next month, there'll be a small table with Rose's photo and a single white rose, grandmother's idea. Her way of letting her daughter be present for something joyful instead of only existing in the shadow of her death. I still don't wear red around her. Not because I have to, but because I understand now. Some wounds don't heal. You just learn to carry them differently. My grandmother carried hers alone for 55 years. She doesn't have to anymore. Neither does Rose.